With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch and how you can discover this new level of softness with their iconic sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% responded that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They source the rarest 100% organic cotton for an incredible softness to start. Then they skip the toxins and harsh chemicals for a natural feel unlike anything else, and it all comes together with their signature weave. This special design feels buttery, breathable, and unlocks new levels of softness with every wash, and they stand behind their promise of softness. With their 30-night guarantee, you can wash, style, and sleep in their sheets for an entire month. If during the 30 nights, you don't love your sheets or feel them getting softer and softer, you can send them right back. No questions asked. So head to bollandbranch.com for 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. That's BOLL and branch.com. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, GoPowerCat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Now, here's your host, GoPowerCat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the PowerCat Podcast. I'm Tim Fitzgerald, and yep, I'm on video. So is everyone else. The cameras will eventually move to get better homes, more stable. But for now, this is what we're going with. I like the fact that my vent shows. I think that's really classy. Shows.
So, should get the light switch showing too.
But here's what we got here. There's the guys. There's the studio. There's dude's legs.
Is that the camera right there?
That's your camera right there.
Hi, everyone.
Dude, the studio camera is on the lounge sign.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of creepy.
Yep, kind of creepy. But we don't need that unless we want to do a dog update. I think Daphne is out of camera. She's behind me a little bit. But here we go. It's the Questions Podcast, brought to you by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you come to the Fridge every time you come to Manhattan. And I sincerely mean that, because if you're going to buy liquor, wine, champagne, how about champagne the other day? Make sure you stop in the Fridge. Great selection, great service, great people, wonderful people. The Fridge, yeah, it's a little busy because they're the best. Stop in the Fridge at the corner of this and that, the town in which we live.
College and Claflin.
Thank you.
No, I got that wrong.
Westport
and Claflin. Got to screw it up on video, right?
Yep. So this is weird because my camera's here and I'm looking at you.
Are you going to introduce us?
Oh, that's Zach Carlson and Cole Carmody. I'm a little rattled. I've never had to worry about camera shots on a podcast. It's not like my TV show where I've got one fixed camera on me. I got multiple cameras rolling through here. It's so fun.
High tech over here.
You should do a butt cam for the drive, like that.
Like the behind me?
That one, yeah.
And yeah, my butt doesn't really show on that camera. Hold on, I forgot to put my phone into do not disturb. There we go. Let's get going with the questions from Wabash Station. We had 2 threads.
Yeah,
Didn't deliver great questions. Well, I thought you were in bed probably last night when we decided we better do a podcast today.
We were probably on the road back from Morgantown.
Yeah.
Back to the hotel in Pittsburgh. Actually, it was Washington.
Brian Gilbert's favorite place.
Did Gilbert come back?
Sources say he did.
Okay. Sometime we're going to take him out to Pittsburgh. He's just going to stay.
He loves his hometown. We went to the Pittsburgh Steelers pro shop.
Hometown.
He didn't buy anything. It was a little picked over, but we did.
They got to celebrate that 9-8 season and making the playoffs. You know how it is.
Kind of hot there.
Yeah.
That was very passionate. I'm sorry.
You need to calm down.
We're going to de-hot him.
Okay.
He's right on top of that mic. There we go.
First question's from us because nobody asked us about this. Nick Saban, what are your thoughts?
I'm shocked, but not really. Not really. College coaches are in college football, so they don't have to worry about general manager stuff, contracts, drafts, player personnel's comings and goings other than recruiting. And now it's all about that. The NIL, transfer portal. It's like being an NFL general manager that's also the coach.
Mm-hmm.
It has totally changed the profession. It's made it miserable for coaches in general. And you know what? I'll be blunt. He's an old dog. And he probably doesn't want to learn these new tricks because that's why he's in college coaching. I don't envy the person that follows him. It's going to be a big name, I would imagine. But how do you follow that? How do you follow that level of success? And I shared this on WIW when I was on there earlier on Wednesday. Meeting him last year at the Sugar Bowl for the first time was really interesting because I got a better feel for the whole program, being around the kids, the coordinators, all that. He's getting those 5 stars that are of high character.
Yeah.
Now, people sometimes wonder, well, how does a school like that get a 5-star? Well, there was a reason why the Alabamas, Georgias, LSUs, Michigans, Oklahomas, and Texases passed on him. There's probably off the field things. But he was getting the 5 stars that were really enjoyable, good kids, good young men. And you can't develop players anymore in this era. They just go. And in Alabama, you're parking 5 stars for a season or two, and they don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, Alabama is a developmental program. Like, I know people talk about K-State being a developmental program, but Alabama really is too. And I was a little surprised, but, I think when we think about retirements, it's important to keep in mind, not everybody goes out with a farewell tour. Coach K went out with a farewell tour. Nick Saban didn't have a farewell tour. Now, I think it was Bud Elliott from our friends over at 24/7, the National Cover 3 podcast. He was talking about how it seemed like throughout the entire year, Nick Saban was doing things as if it seemed like he was doing it for the last time. He went on the Pat McAfee show for the first time ever this year and did a weekly appearance there. Was pretty unhinged there. I mean, I'm looking back on it, there should have been more signs that this was probably going to be it. But there wasn't. And I think that the sport will be forever changed because he really has. I mean, say what you want to say about Alabama, but that went from a program that had been dominant, in spurts to now they are unanimously and universally recognized as the face of college football.
Right.
I think what's interesting here is there's now a January silly season where not only will Alabama's job be open, but every domino that falls, before it. Does Clemson open up? Does Dabo take the job? Does Kirby Smart take the job?
Oregon, Dan Lanning.
And it wouldn't surprise me if 2 head coach jobs opened up because the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator job at Alabama is more lucrative than being a head coach somewhere.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, we're finding that certainly from the SCS level, but also from the non-power conferences that head coaches are taking coordinator jobs now. The pay gap between the elite schools and other FBS schools is getting tremendous.
Throw in the transfer portal too, guys. That's something that we haven't mentioned, but now every single player at Alabama, even though the portal is technically closed, I got to get used to this new mic. I talk with my hands a lot on this podcast, even when it wasn't on video, but they now have 30 days to enter the transfer portal. So that's something to keep in mind too. And that could it might not impact K-State, but it very well could. I mean, that trickle down effect is going to be real. So think about if the Dodgers just all of a sudden decided to break up like that.
Yeah.
That's basically what's going on.
Well, I'm sure that the AD was in on this. I mean, there's no way. I mean, Nick Saban, Alabama football's his baby. So I would imagine that the AD was well aware that something was going on and probably has an action plan. If not, they're screwed.
Yeah.
They're in big trouble. If the AD found out today and had no plan and no idea this was coming, oh my gosh, scramble mode trying to keep this roster together.
I guess I can see it from that point. from a player management standpoint. I understand that, but also it's the Alabama job. And if you're the AD and you have an opening at Alabama for your football coach, I don't see that as the worst problem in the world. Every single qualified head coach. I mean, you could literally get who you want.
Right.
I mean, there is no question. And because of that, I don't think there's much of a player management issue. I think that the guys that go to Alabama, they go to play for Nick Saban, but they go to win championships
At Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama is more than capable of finding a coach that can win them championships. I do not expect any drop off with whatever happens.
I will not be going to Alabama.
Dang it.
Wow.
But a big Twitter account brought up Chris Kleiman. Stats of war. Look, I don't think that's going to happen.
Be funny if it did.
No, it wouldn't.
I would laugh.
No, don't.
He would have the record for most national championships by any coach ever.
Yeah. Win one at Alabama and be almost there.
Two-time Hall of Famer.
Yeah, for multiple jobs,
Yeah.
but not K-State.
From Dinland 0809, over Chris Kleiman's tenure, has the football transfer portal been a net positive or a net negative for K-State?
I think a positive.
I think a positive by
Right.
far.
I mean, look at the first year. They had no running backs. They got 2 running backs out of the transfer portal when they had none on scholarship when he arrived. I mean, the transfer portal changes everything for new coaches now. And Lance Leipold has done a marvelous job accessing the transfer portal, because now you can rebuild your roster much quicker. And also they've had a couple forgiveness years about the number of players you can sign within your class, which I don't understand why they have a limit on your class. Just leave it at 85. And if you need to sign 30 guys, let them sign 30 guys. But what it does create is opportunities to build your program quickly. We saw Dion do it at Colorado, run off almost the entire team and bring almost an entire team new. And but I think for K-State, it's been a good thing. And I don't even think they've come close to maximizing it. They've got to make some internal changes. I know it's on their radar. Again, I'm going to say this for the 100th time. Please hire a former coach as your portal manager that just evaluates guys as they go into the portal, or you're looking at guys that might end up in the portal to see if they are fit for your program. And then when he goes in the portal, you know where you want to go with this. That first few hours of kids being in the portal is often what decides where they go. And K-State's got to get better at it.
Or before.
Yeah, well, that's an unfortunate truth.
Yeah.
I mean, K-State suffered a loss in the portal where schools were reaching out saying you can make more money in the NIL. That's the shit I'm just sick of. They got to fix that. They absolutely have to fix that. They can't let schools or agents representing the players be reaching out. This agent issue is a problem.
I think when
agents usually are snakes.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's the people reaching out with the NIL that causes these problems. And, the question asked, has it been a net positive or a net negative? I think this is really the first year that K-State has had players that have transferred up, right? Like
right.
That's exactly
if you even want to say that.
That's
right?
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Like throughout the years, K-State, when kids have left, they've probably gone down. Like off the top of my head, the only player who I can think of, or the only 2 players that I can think of that transferred up, really didn't even have any success. And you're thinking of Tyrone Taleni, who didn't play at K-State, goes to USC, and T. Denson, who goes to Purdue. Other than that, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't really think of anybody who's even landed at a Power 5 school. Now, obviously, Will Howard and Kobe Savage are different. Okay. And I think that's where people can be like, oh,
Willie.
Yeah, Willie.
Well, I put him in a different category.
Okay.
I look at Will Howard and say he was a senior,
and
he was either going to go to the NFL or he was going to transfer. I did a Q&A with our Ohio State site, and he asked me like, why did Will Howard leave? And I was like, well, it's pretty simple. He wasn't going to be the guy. I mean, he would have had to have competed, and he doesn't really have to do that at Ohio State. You guys watched the bowl game. You saw how horrible that quarterback situation was. He's going to be the starter at Ohio State. Guess what? If Avery Johnson would have transferred, so would have he. So that's Will Howard was a senior. That is why he left. Kobe Savage. Did they want him to come back? I would venture to say yes. But guess what, guys? He was also a senior. He was either going to transfer or go to the NFL. And so he decided to transfer. And so I don't really look at that as a net loss for K-State. They've had a lot more successes in the portal than they had of kids who have left. And usually the kids who have left have been, hey, you might want to go try and find somewhere else to play. Will Lee, I put that in a different category. There was obviously a lot of other issues that went on behind the scenes there. From a strictly player standpoint, sure, you can say that was a net negative, but I'm willing to see who they get to replace in the portal first.
And I think this year, when you look at who's left, like you said, this is the first year you've seen players go to good schools. Ohio State, Texas A&M, really good Oregon with Kobe Savage, good programs. But I think that's a testament to what the K-State program is. K-State winning the Big 12 championship in 2022 has allowed a lot of their players more opportunity, more eyeballs, watching good football on film, saying, hey, we could use that guy. But I think that this is the first year where not only do you see the talent leaving the way you did, but what they brought in was probably their worst year in the transfer portal too. I think this is the first year you ask this question because you're like, well, look at what we lost and look at what we brought in.
Mhm.
I think this is the first year where you're just like, wow, there's kind of this disparity of, and granted, that's for next season versus what this season was. But when you look at the portal, your incoming guys from this season, I think this was probably the worst year of the 5 for Chris Kleiman.
Still some dominoes to fall, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Go back up. Tyrone Cellini was an all Pac-12.
He might have been honorable mention.
That remains one of the more baffling.
Yeah.
Couldn't play at Kansas State, so he transfers to USC.
He didn't hardly play this year, though. That was the thing. He was an all-conference last year, didn't hardly play this year. Correct? I might be wrong on that, but all the USC games I watched, he hardly ever got it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Next.
From Wade Ram, Will Howard. Oh, no. Did I just ask that one?
No?
No. We talked about the transfer portal. From Wade Ram, Will Howard to Ohio State. Does it say anything that no offensive players followed Will?
No.
Yeah. No. Not really.
I don't see that really being a trend. I mean, let's be honest here. His friends were leaving, and that played a role in it. I mean, the older guys were leaving, and Ben Sinnott, his roommate and best friend, was going to the NFL, and that was unrelated to Will transferring.
Mm-hmm.
If Will had come back to Kansas State, Ben was going to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He's NFL ready, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We got Kansas and UCF in here, so if I'm at an odd angle, it's because I'm sneaking peeks at that. That doesn't surprise me at all. And you know what? Him ending up at a program such as Ohio State doesn't surprise me at all. He's a good quarterback. Again, I've said this other places, but I'm kind of want to see him with Ohio State receivers, with Ohio State weapons, with Ohio State's offensive line in a league that honestly I don't think they claim they play great defense, but I don't necessarily buy in on that all the way. I think they just have horrible offenses. And plus he's close to home. I think it's a great opportunity for Will.
Will is different than all the other Ohio State quarterbacks they've had in the past. I know we're not talking about Ohio State specifically here. Let it be known, shout out to my dad, who's a Michigan fan. So unfortunately, I've had to watch a lot of Ohio State and Michigan in my life. Will Howard does not really fit the mold of any recent Ohio State quarterbacks. He's not as athletic as some of them.
Mm-hmm.
CJ Stroud is a sit in the pocket, throw the ball down the field kind of quarterback, but he really stretches the field a little bit more than Will does. And maybe part of that is, the offensive scheme. There's something to be said for that. But they haven't really had a big guy who is literally the prototypical stand in the pocket, throw the ball kind of quarterback. Can Will run the football? 100%, but they're not going to use him in the quarterback run game. When you have the weapons around him, you don't need to use him in the quarterback run game. He is going to be the literal prototypical stand in the pocket, throw the ball down the field quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how he does in that system where all he's worried about is getting the ball to playmakers.
Right. And then on 3rd and 6, nobody's open. You run and pick up a first down.
Mm-hmm.
More NFL style than what he's been in the past.
Next question from Claws Out, Balls Out. Is there any news on the plan for Daniel Green?
No, there isn't. I'm a little surprised. We haven't heard anything. Maybe Daniel doesn't know yet. Maybe he's looking how his rehab goes. And, he might be checking on his NFL prospects. Might be a lot of things going on here. that, we don't have all the grasp on everything that's in play, but my gut tells me he'll be back, but that's purely a guess.
I think that a lot of it has to do with how he does if he plans on participating at this Big 12 Pro Day.
Right.
And we haven't really talked about that yet, but that's coming up. I'd be in March, maybe, Zach.
Is it still happening?
I think so.
I feel like it's just we heard about it a while ago, and then we haven't really thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to win this game, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, look at that. I think if he goes out and has a great pro day, he's gone. But can he technically still come back? If
he's got a hardship year. If he wants that medical hardship, he can get it.
I think as far as the program goes, I as much if Daniel Green wants to come back, they're going to let him come back.
Oh, absolutely.
But for the health of the program, I would almost argue that Daniel, go try and see what you can do in the NFL, right? Like one more year of college is not going to alter your position, your draft stock. You're going to be 26 years old by the time the draft rolls around next year. You're 25 right now. The odds of you surviving more than 3 or 4 years in the NFL, if you are 26 as a 26-year-old rookie, as far as K-State goes, I kind of feel like you want those younger guys to play, because if they don't, you have the big bad transfer portal that always looms.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that's just the way things are. You have to, throw your guys some bones every once in a while. And I think that if Daniel Green left, the health of that linebacker room might be a little bit better. But if he stayed, the ceiling for next year, I think, is a little higher.
I agree with both those points.
The flip side of that, though, is K-State has the opportunity to have a 3-year NFL vet, essentially, on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
Who would say no to having a 3-year NFL guy on their team?
They would say yes, 100%.
I mean, that's essentially what this comes down to.
Well, let's be really blunt here. You know me, I don't really hold back. The young linebackers are really promising, but there's not an Avery Johnson.
No.
There's not one that leaves and you think, well, I'm not going to be able to replace this player, right away. We got to keep looking. But I agree with you also. They don't want those young guys to leave. They like them. I think they bring something to the table. It'll be interesting, but no, we haven't heard anything on Daniel yet.
If Asa Newsome would not have gotten hurt,
right,
it would make this a lot easier, because I think he would be that linebacker like Avery who is going to have an excellent season.
I would agree. I think there's a lot of promise there with Asa.
Last question of the first half from Girth Brooks. 24/7 Sports has 7 of the new Big 12 teams in the way too early top 25. You have Kansas.
Top 30, I think is what it was.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was a top 30. You have Kansas, Kansas State, Arizona, Utah, West Virginia, Colorado, and Oklahoma State. Realistically, how many teams from this league make the college football playoff? I know it's early, but who would you bet on making it?
Okay, so there's 7 teams in the top. I'm going to go with 8 in the playoff. But I'm an optimist.
I think the Big 12 gets at least 2.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess it's so hard to predict and think about what it's going to be like. We've never had this before. My initial reaction to this question is 1. That's my initial reaction.
No, I think it's easy. I think it's easy to look at. There's 12 slots. 1 goes to a group of 5. And then you have 11 spots for 4 champions. So there's 7 spots remaining. I think that the Big 10, the SEC each get 2 each. There's 4. Then you have 3 more.
I think they get 3 each.
Counting the champion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 3. Yeah. I mean, I think what we're looking at here is the Big 10 and SEC will get 3 at a minimum.
Right.
But here's the problem. If they're going to stick with the committee, which they better stick with the committee, how are you going to have the 4th team in a conference above the 2nd team in another conference, unless that conference is woefully bad and they have head-to-head games to prove they're bad, like the ACC was this year? You take their champion and then you move on. Now this year, let's be honest, if this had been a playoff year, Oklahoma would have been included. I believe that. Maybe not. I mean, we've got
they weren't ranked in the top 12.
They weren't in the New Year's 6 picture, so maybe they wouldn't have been. But I think 2 do get in. Don't ask me who. I can't wrap my mind around this conference yet with the new programs coming in.
I'll say 1 legacy team, 1 new team.
That'd be great.
Is it? So the question is this, though, guys. Is that the loser of the Big 12 championship game, or is that the team that maybe finishes with the same record but has one less loss because they didn't lose the Big 12 championship
You got
game?
it. There's
So-
almost an advantage there to
Yeah.
not be in that game.
So if you're 10-2, you have to win that championship game to guarantee yourself a spot, as opposed to if you're 10-2 like Oklahoma was and just chilling at home, you have a better chance of making it, right? Like the committee cannot reward teams for not playing in their conference championship game. That should not, it should almost be like that conference championship game, if you lose it, has no impact on your resume.
The only
If you're going to play conference championship games, you can't, right?
But the place where I disagree is I think that you can get scenarios, especially in the SEC now with no divisions. And if you're going to play, just, 8 games apiece and you've got, 3 teams that are 8-0 or 7-1, I mean, it does get sticky there to where a loss in the championship game could be a bad loss, especially if you lost a game to that second place team somewhere along the way. There's so many just tiebreakers and what else with just having non-division scheduling that I think that having no divisions is going to be beneficial to each conference because they're going to be able to say, hey,
Right.
well, they don't have a bad loss on them. They might have lost to one of the 2 championship game teams, but they're 11-1 or 10-2. They lost to the 2 teams in the championship game. I think you create an argument for your teams to get into the playoff a little easier.
Well, what's interesting is, how do I want to put this? We saw it with how the Big 12 tiebreakers were going to play out in different scenarios. You were oddly rewarded for losses to bad teams because it doesn't impact your tiebreakers with the teams with which you're competing for spots. UCF beats Kansas.
We have a
and
court
we have court
storming.
storming in Orlando. Good for UCF. That is incredible. Welcome to the Big 12. I'm just it makes me uncomfortable that Oklahoma State essentially got into the championship game because it got their butts kicked at UCF, and that didn't impact the tiebreakers at all. Think about how that doesn't make sense. Oh, you lose the tiebreakers because you lost to good teams, but you win the tiebreakers because you lost to bad teams that aren't competing for the same spot in the championship game. What? So yeah, that's where this will come in, where the committee will look at this and say, hold on, you lost to a team that went 6-6. No. And you lost at 10 wins and 9 wins. Okay, well, I see why you lost your tiebreaker to get in the championship game, but you're the better team. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
I'll answer this question, go on record, and I'll say, I don't know how many teams are going to get in, but I think the teams with the realistic chance at getting in will be Kansas, Kansas State, Arizona, and Utah. Those are the 4 teams I think maybe K-State gets in, or maybe the Big 12 gets in 2 of those teams. I would say those would be the 4 teams I look at as the 4 teams that have the greatest chance.
And there's got to be someone that you're not even thinking of now, because that's the
Probably.
way this conference works.
Do we have to take KU seriously?
Yes, they're good. I know. I know.
We don't like it.
I know. We'll see what losing their offensive coordinator does to them, but they got some dudes and they got a good head coach. That's it for the first half of the PowerCat Questions podcast. On the other side, we'll get into some basketball. We've got some women's basketball. Congratulations again to UCF winning it at home against Kansas. That's pretty huge. And I'm going to move my camera because it's bugging the hell out of me. I don't want to look over here. I want to look here. I want to look at my guys, but no, I got to look here. We'll be back. Maybe I'll run to the field.
GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat podcast continues after this short break.
Is your January looking dry? Get some lotion. Get a humidifier. And better yet, get Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices across local stores to get the best price on a huge selection of drinks perfect for dry January. Every single time. Non-alcoholic wines? Have a look. Ready-made mocktails? Grab a straw and order them up. Beer without the alcohol? Yep, take your pick. You can find all of them here, in the app, in that phone that's in your hand. Could it be any simpler? Nope, not a chance. So shop for great deals on all your dry January beverages or other drinks and get them delivered to your door or blanket fort, maybe. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations. And don't forget to lotion up your elbows. They're looking a little dry.
Welcome back to the Power Cat Podcast.
Welcome back to the Power Cat Questions Podcast, sponsored by The Fridge Wholesale Liquor. I am Fitz. If you're watching on YouTube, this is my super close-up. It's unsettling. I know. This is the better angle, though, but it's unsettling. Zach Carlson, Cole Carmody across the table for me. The new setup here in the studio. They're on camera. We've got on our YouTube feed right now, we got the lower camera, the studio camera running. See how far it's behind. Well, it's not that far behind. It's really not. I'm a little surprised. Thought it was going to be about a full second behind. Daphne's wandering around somewhere. Dude got bored, had to open up the door here. It's a mess.
I can't wait for them to bark and you lose it on camera.
On camera. I will lose
That's
it.
not going to happen.
You're going to have to calm down every time they bark now. Just be like,
Well, probably, I should probably build like a, because these aren't live. We can go back and edit them. And maybe I drop over like, what is it? What's the
color bars and tone.
what from, oh, for God's sakes. Where's this 5 seconds later?
Oh,
SpongeBob?
Yeah, SpongeBob. Maybe I'll put that up every time they start barking. Because they will.
How much SpongeBob have you watched?
Very little.
You have watched at least?
Very little. You know what show I've watched almost none of, and yet I GIF it all the time? The Office.
It's a great show.
Never watched a full. I watched one full episode, did not find it humorous at all.
You should go back and watch it. It's on Netflix.
I think maybe my humor has caught up to it now.
You've got to get through like the first season, apparently. That's what they say about these NBC comedy shows. You got to pain through the first 6
Seinfeld was that way.
episodes.
Seinfeld was should have been canceled probably, but someone at the network said, no, we're going to give it another year. And it took off.
Yeah.
Before we start this podcast, I just want to say for everyone watching, I usually show up to these things in like sweatpants with like flip-flops and
yes.
So
I've never
the fact
seen you wear flip-flops. You're lying.
Okay, not flip-flops, slides, whatever.
Speedos.
I texted in our group chat, do I have to wear a collared shirt? And the boss responded, yes. I'll be fine. I guess I'm a guest now anyway. That's not even normally what I'm on, so it's fine.
You're always part of the team, Cole.
Thank you.
Just because you went and took a full-time job where you get to interact with children all day.
And wear collared shirts.
Just saying. Okay. We're sponsored by The Fridge. Make sure you check out The Fridge every stinking time you come to Manhattan. Please do so. Tell them you heard about them on the Power Cat podcast, even if that's a lie. Just go ahead and tell them that. They'll fall for it. But don't ask for Die Hard on VHS. The employees there now are so young, they don't even know what VHS is. It's sad.
They don't even know the store was a Blockbuster.
They might not even know what a Blockbuster was. On with the questions from Wabash Station. Zach, you got them?
I got them. From Go Stay Kate, does Jerome Tang sandbag in the non-conference?
That's a great question. I don't think it's sandbags the right word.
I don't think, and I don't want to say he doesn't take it seriously, but he doesn't necessarily care about the results if they're wins. And even if they're losses to like Nebraska, I think that he's very forgiving to his team when they don't perform well, when it doesn't matter. Because really, it doesn't matter much.
Unless you lose a bunch of them.
Unless you lose a bunch of them, but they lost to Nebraska. They lost
just
to,
picked up a quality win.
Right. They've lost to USC and they've lost to
Miami. Yeah, they beat Providence. Yeah.
So 3 losses to
tournament teams.
Good teams.
Tournament teams.
You know, it's hard to look at K-State's record right now and say and be upset with it, even though there were a lot of games that were extremely frustrating to watch.
I think he has this thing in him, and it's probably not this right wording, but when they're struggling in some of these games, I think he's like, let's let them cook. Let's just let them suffer through this. And, you know, they can learn the lesson of not doing what we want them to do. Yeah, I think it just all leads to once they tip off Big 12 play. And I bring this up too. Grant McCaslin's doing the same thing at Tech. I mean, is this a Scott Drew thing where they just kind of aim their ship towards the start of conference season and then try to get the next peak around the end of the season? I don't know.
Fitz, you use that term wrong, by the way.
What?
Let them cook. That's like a thing that kids say, but it's not like let them cook. I know what you mean. Like let them just roast up and die and wither away.
Mhm.
When you say let them cook, that means like they're supposed to be doing something
Yeah.
right. Like let him cook. He's doing good. So you use that completely wrong.
No, I didn't. I used it
For your term.
generationally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of funny
That's-
that you say that.
That's funny.
Did you get that?
No, I heard it.
Okay.
I understood what he meant though.
Yeah, I did too. But
Yeah. That
But yes,
the,
there's a
the new generation has it totally wrong.
there is a double meaning now.
Let it cook means
Let them cook.
let it
means-
burn.
Let them cook means they're making a really good meal. Don't want to interfere.
right.
Okay.
I think that the non-conference slate was weird for K-State. It seemed like every team they played was pretty good. Like take out Central Arkansas, every other team they played was
I-
like.
No, K-State played to
Pretty
their
good.
level.
Yeah.
I think is what
That's a
happened
good point.
more.
Although I will say USC 8-7 right now,
Really.
so they're going to have to kind of go on a run to make the tournament.
They
But
look so good in that.
they were
opener.
really good. They were really good, and I think there's something to be said about waiting for your best player to come back, because that's what they were doing. Like if you look at the rotations, Dorian Finister wasn't getting very many minutes, if anything at all. I would have to assume because they were kind of building a rotation around when Quez Glover and Naquan Tomlin were going to come back. They were getting those players ready for when those guys came back because the full expectation was that they would. So the fact that they didn't, now they're like, okay, well, they're not coming back. So this is the team we got, and we
Right.
got to roll with it and find a way to win with this team. It changes the game plan. It's like for football. If you sit there and you wait for your star quarterback to come back, then your offense is going to look different as opposed to saying, these are the players that we have. This is what we're going to do. And so I think when they came to the realization that this is our team, let's find a way to make it work, you're seeing how good a coach is this coaching staff is
Right.
because they're able to adjust in the middle of the season.
I agree.
And Tang's talked about not wanting to peak too early. I think Jerome Tang would be very upset if K-State was playing really good basketball in November and December because he knows that that's just not the time that you
No.
need to be at your peak.
No, I had that conversation with him earlier this year. I asked him, I said, I sense that you don't really want your team to be playing at its top level. And he goes, oh no, we need to get to that later in the year. So there is kind of an art here.
Isn't that when he talked about the COVID year where they had to do a shutdown?
Yeah.
And then they came back and was like, they're not going to believe that we weren't practicing.
Yeah.
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 That was funny.
Good.
Next question from Girth Brooks. According to KenPom, the Big 12 has 11 teams in the top 55,
Crazy.
with K-State being the 11th place team from the Big 12. Where do you see K-State finishing in the Big 12 standings, and how many Big 12 teams make the NCAA tournament?
Okay, hold on. I need to figure. Oh, Oklahoma State, UCF, and West Virginia are probably the other three, right?
I would guess, but also UCF might be in after tonight.
Yeah.
Well, UCF before, I'm assuming, was
Yeah.
not in.
I don't. What the committee does with this conference will be fascinating because can you really put in 10 teams from a 14-team conference into a 66-team bracket, 68-team bracket?
Well, who are the teams that are for sure not going to make it? We got to start there.
West Virginia.
West Virginia,
Oklahoma State.
potentially,
Yeah.
probably so. Even
Yeah.
though they've been playing better as of late, but they're 0-2. I would agree. Those are the two for
Mike
sure.
Boynton's
teams.
on the hot seat,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think.
I'm not ready to say UCF since they just beat Kansas, but I don't think UCF makes the tournament.
Future Kansas State assistant
get-
Mike Boyden.
The UCF gets the night off from any slander.
They
for what
do.
they did.
Oh, I'm shocked.
They still
That's-
got their way. They still have a ways to go to get on the bubble, though. Correct.
Yeah.
So those are the three teams that I would say are for sure not going to make the tournament. Everybody else, I mean, Cincinnati just beat Texas. They would be the only other team. I mean, Texas Tech? They're 2-0.
Hold on. Texas beat Cincinnati.
Texas beat Cincinnati.
They came back and won.
Cincinnati beat somebody.
BYU.
BYU. That's
At BYU, so it's a
Yeah.
better win. Yeah.
Texas Tech is 2-0. So these teams that were bad the last few seasons are kind of not anymore, I guess, if you want to say that.
Well, the advantage here
I
is
don't
that
know,
if
guys.
you're a UCF, well, you got a resume builder now. You got a cornerstone for your resume. And Iowa State doesn't really need that, but boy, they got one. They got one the other night against Houston. This conference is just hand-to-hand combat, night in and night out. This absolutely proves that in this conference, you're never safe. Never. And maybe that's not unique to the Big 12 anymore. We saw Nebraska beat Purdue pretty handily the other night. Well, we didn't see it. None of us cared to watch that. I've seen all Nebraska basketball I could take. Although my least favorite player in college basketball is on an absolute tear.
Tommy
So,
Nanga.
I don't want to talk about it. He just runs around and throws the ball up. And apparently he's hit like more than 50% of his threes over a 3-game period. He's awful. But good for them.
I just think how fun this is going to be when they add Arizona too. I mean, gosh.
Unbelievable.
Arizona State isn't awful either.
If he gets his dream, Brett Yormark gets his dream of adding Gonzaga and Villanova, and holy cats.
The NCAA tournament or the Big 12 tournament might be more entertaining than the NCAA tournament.
Well, that's what he wants.
Yeah.
He wants to create such incredible value with the regular season TV package that a Turner would actually bid on it to replace NBA games that they don't have. They don't have the inventory. I mean, it sounds like someone's going all in on the NBA and probably outbidding Turner. So,
yeah, because their deal's up next season.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
So between Iowa State, K-State, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, probably one of those 4 teams is going to be that other team that for sure doesn't make the tournament, right?
Yeah.
That you're looking at that group. But that would mean all these teams would have to slide. And quite honestly, guys, BYU might be that team right now. I know they were at 12th in the conference, 12th in the country at one point, but they got upset at home and then they just lost to Baylor and they're 0-2 in the conference. It is really hard to recover from being 0-2 in any conference, especially in the Big 12. Now, they get to go play UCF. So maybe they win that game, but then they got to go to Texas Tech. They get Texas. I mean, it's just a gauntlet.
K-State 2019.
Yeah, it's happened.
It
happens.
I know that's why you were smiling.
The
But,
Barry Brown halftime speech that changed the entire program.
but this ain't that conference anymore.
No, it's even tougher now. It's even tougher.
Next question from K-Ned. The Big 12 had 5 basketball games on Tuesday, with 4 of them being aired on ESPN Plus. How can football games with more logistics be scheduled 6 days in advance for the best matchups on TV, but basketball TV is set in stone before the season? Shouldn't there be a happy medium?
I agree with that. I do. I've never been able to make sense of it. And this is going to piss off K-State fans, but KU shouldn't be on Plus. And tonight was an example why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were on ESPN Plus and they got beat. Maybe ESPN wants that because it drives viewers to Plus, which I appreciate, because the more viewers that go to Plus end up watching other Big 12 games. But there's just so much inventory right now with this expanded conference. I don't know what to do with the games. That's why I really believe that another provider is going to have to enter this contract. I mean, Fox will have some games along with ESPN, but I think a third provider is going to have to be available for basketball. There's just too much out there.
If this game was at Allen Fieldhouse tonight between UCF and KU, that should have been on Plus. But if KU's on the road and there's a chance that they can get upset, I think that you should put them on broadcast.
What's interesting is I sense that it's the opposite of that for the TV networks, not because they want the better game, but because the announcers want to go to Allen Fieldhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like they show KU at home more than on the road.
I agree.
On the main platforms.
Yeah. But I think that, yes, like to K-Ned's point, you should be able to, the Big 12 should have slots. Let's say Big Monday, that 6 o'clock, that 8 p.m. slot. Both of those are Big 12 games. You should have 2 other games, that could be played on Plus. If you have 4 Monday games, the Big 12 conference should say, this is going to be played on this network and this is going to be played on this network. And at this time, I think that you can change times slightly. I don't think you can change dates, but if there's a slate of games for a certain day, the Big 12 and ESPN need to agree on what the time slots are and what networks they get.
Can I be a stick in the mud when you're done, Zach?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. I didn't know if you were done.
I mean, pretty much.
I want to be a stick in the mud. Why are we complaining about this? We should be complaining about football. Like, baseball is scheduled out way in advance. It has the time and the dates and the networks. Well, basketball is scheduled out way in advance. It has the time and the date and the networks. I'm okay with that. Like, sure.
So you'd be a fan of the opposite.
You want football games to be set in stone before the season,
it makes,
or earlier than 6 days or 13 days.
It does, because think about all of the implications, and I understand everything is made for TV, but from a fan standpoint, and even from our business standpoint, how much easier would it be to logistically plan out travel all of the time?
It is a problem for us.
So, I mean, I think if you want people to go to your games, this is the best way to do it. Hey, dude, how you doing, buddy?
Dude just made an appearance.
Think about it like this, guys. You know how easy it is to request off if you are coming to a game in Manhattan. You live in Kansas City. You want to get to that 6 o'clock game. Thank you, dude.
He did that on purpose. He walked into the shot. But
you know what I mean, Fitz?
I know.
You know where I disagree with you, Cole? The NFL has flex scheduling, and they just expanded it this year to include Monday Night Football.
Well, then you can flex it. Then I'm totally okay with saying this game is on.
Actually, I do. I kind of like the flexing of Big 12 games. Actually, I think it's a pretty good idea.
But like this game, KU and UCF, it would have been flexed. UCF just lost by 25. It wouldn't have been flexed.
No.
So.
But I'm talking flexing time slots. I'm not talking about flexing networks. This game would have been played at 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever, wherever it was going to be played. Doesn't matter. But it was going to be played on Wednesday night.
Right.
You can put it on a network. If the Big 12 has the inventory and the ESPN has a certain number of slots, and you know that the remaining inventory that doesn't get picked up for the broadcast slots are going to be on Plus, it shouldn't matter which game is on which network. The Big 12 Conference and ESPN should be able to agree at a certain point. You know, maybe it's 6 days. It doesn't really matter because the game's going to be played at the same time, and I think it makes it so much easier for basketball than football. You should be able to choose which networks get which games.
I agree with
I mean,
that.
it's just, it doesn't make any sense that you can sit here and have bad games on ESPN2 because you scheduled it up, 4 months in advance.
What about ORS? ESPN Plus or ESPN2?
I want to say that there are a few games like that on the schedule, and there have been in the past, but it's not like football where there's like a set guideline of the TV times get set by this certain time on this certain date because it's a week out.
I have less of a problem with the basketball and more of a problem with the football. And I know K-Ned's question was about basketball, but that's my opinion.
I just wish ESPN Plus would switch their interface. It's confusing. You sometimes can't find the games you want. Like I opened it up earlier, I could not find Kansas UCF. It turns out it wasn't updating. It just wasn't.
ESPN has terrible applications. Mobile, tablet.
I have a lot less
smart
problems
TV.
with ESPN Plus on tablet or phone, mobile.
Oh, it's terrible
than on the TV. I mean, my TV, and maybe it's the fact it's my TVs, because let's be honest, I didn't spend a ton of money on TVs. A lot of these were from the office. Like this was an office TV and it's inexpensive, but it just takes forever to load. And sometimes the games don't play. It's just very frustrating to me, but I think the interface sucks. Sometimes I find it easier to scroll down, go to football to get rid of everything else. I mean, they're now doing like channels within it with the UCF and which is very confusing when I'm talking about the UCF after talking about
You're talking about UFC.
UFC.
You're talking about Dana White's fighting league.
The fighting. UFC, not UCF.
In the octagon of doom.
Can't Central Florida, please. I'm looking right at the camera. Can't we call you Central Florida? I mean, UFS. Let's move on.
Okay. Last question of the podcast from JB, KSU Forever. What do you think is the main reason K-State women's basketball doesn't seem to be getting the recognition some feel that they should? I know their non-conference schedule wasn't that good, but they're still 15-1 with the
16-1 now.
16-1 after K-State did beat OU tonight. They're still 16-1 with the only loss to number 5 Iowa, who they also beat. They feel and play like a top 10 team to JB.
Well, the problem is women's basketball isn't competitive enough. It's getting more competitive. Kansas State is a perfect example of that. there has not been enough talent in the women's game to provide enough talent across the board. Plus, women have 15 scholarships still. Men were reduced to 13 many years ago. You take 2 players off of every elite team and scatter them across women's basketball, and more programs will be competitive. The reason they're not moving up is nobody's losing enough above them to move up. And they're not regarded as one of the programs. They're not UConn or South Carolina. By the way, UConn's kind of struggling a little bit. They're not in the top 5, which is odd.
And with all due respect to Iowa, Iowa is not regarded by the voters very highly. I went through probably half of the voters when I saw the last AP poll. And Iowa, K-State might have been 10th or 11th in a lot of those polls, but those polls were putting Iowa at 6, 7, 8. Granted, there's probably a lot of polls that I didn't look at that have Iowa at 2 and 3 to get them up into that, top 5 spot. But I don't think Iowa is regarded as good as what K-State fans probably think Iowa is. I mean,
they played for a national title last year.
Played for a national title. Player. They have the best player in the country.
Who K-State's done a pretty good job on.
Right. So it's easy to look from the K-State angle at, they beat Iowa. Their only losses to Iowa. Iowa played in the national championship game last year. Yeah, it feels easy for K-State fans to say, yes, they should be higher. But
Cole, did you say the women's game is 1 p.m. on Saturday?
Yes.
Folks, K-State men are on the road. They play at 3, so it's going to be a tight fit. But I would encourage you, if you're in the area, to go to the women's game on Saturday at Bramlage Coliseum. They play number 10 Texas. This is their opportunity. I would venture to guess a lot of voters will swap them in their polls if K-State wins that game, particularly if they win it comfortably, by 6 or more, or whatever it is, that K-State will end up in the 10 slot and Texas will go to the 12 slot if there's not much more action above them in terms of losses. There just isn't in the women's game.
There's 7 losses combined in the top 10 in the women's game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I need to pull up the men's poll, but I know for a fact there's not 7 losses in the top 10 in the men's poll.
No, it's just, it's how the talent is spread across the game. Women's talent is getting deeper. It's getting more plentiful. Kansas State, again, is a perfect example of that. It's a really good K-State team. This is a Final Four quality team. They can stay the course and stay healthy and start winning these games. They have a great self-identity. They just seem to have the pieces.
There's 20 losses
in the men's top 10.
In the men's top 10.
There you go.
7 in the women's.
That's your answer right there. Yeah. There's a gap in the women's game between the best and the rest.
And really all that matters is if you get a top 16 seed. If you get a top 16 seed, then you host 2 games in Bramlage Coliseum. And from there on out, it's all about matchups.
Yep.
Is K-State the 12th best team in the country? I honestly don't know.
No, I don't watch women's basketball.
I don't know. Do I think they have a chance to beat anybody that's in front of them? Sure. If you just compare them to who played in the national championship game last year and what that team has done now, can they beat that team on any given night? The answer to that question is yes.
I think, I did a daily delivery on this the other day, and I think what we bring to the table is an understanding of basketball from the men's perspective. And really the women's game is a different game in many ways, but certainly the disparity with talent in these programs is notable. I mean, I would bet in seasons past the 5 players on UConn who wouldn't be playing on typical games could line up and win a lot of games in many conferences. There's just been so much talent stocked. But the NIL is impacting women's sports too. We don't talk about it, but there's some NIL out there for women's elite athletes that are going to change the game. It's going to spread the talent out. We're seeing the NIL do that. As much as we bitch, I think the NIL is spreading some talent out across college football. Oh, Alabama, you don't think I'm worth this? Okay, well, I can go to Kansas State, Iowa State, and get a better NIL deal and play a lot more.
Or Florida State.
Sorry. That's right.
Soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Damn it. Did he commit?
Yeah.
Damn it. That sucks. That's it. That's it. Well, we appreciate you. I just looked at the camera up here and it's now here. I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do with my hands? I'm Ricky Bobbying this. That's it for the PowerCat Questions podcast, the first ever full edition on YouTube. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. We appreciate Zach remembering that he's on camera and he can't just get up and leave now. You gotta stay to the end. And it's now the end. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you to the dogs for not barking.
Thank you for listening to the PowerCat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sunday, the AFC Championship, presented by Intuit TurboTax, is on CBS. The defending champion Kansas City Chiefs go on the road once again to face top seed Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, with a trip to Super Bowl 58 on the line. That's a touchdown! We'll get you set for kickoff at 1 Eastern with a special 2-hour edition of the NFL Today, the AFC Championship, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
CBS Sunday, February 11th, after Super Bowl 58.
You collect rewards, right?
This is how I make my living.
It's the debut.
Everyone's looking for something.
Of a new hero.
You strong swimmer? So-so. So-so's okay.
Justin Hartley stars.
How you survive, you make quick, smart decisions, and you never let panic take the wheel. Sounds cool. It is cool, actually. Very cool.
Tracker, part of CBS Premiere Week, Sunday, February 11th, after Super Bowl 58 on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.